right. Are we doing microphones or are we?
Why don't we ask the audience?
think
Can you
we
hear
can
us, or would you
project?
like the microphone?
I can hear you.
We can
Okay.
hear you.
That's
If you need it at some point, just
Yeah.
let us know.
just yeah, me. Okay, so I wanted to start out by
Making me
reminding you.
cry.
I know. I'm gonna get choked up too, probably. Reminding you that we met here in Asheville in 2014 at a writer conference. I was brand new to writing. I had one little story published, and I somehow found myself on a panel with you. And you made me feel so welcome, and you also told me about the Naslund-Mann School of Writing, then Spalding MFA, and changed my life. So I have always been such a huge fan of Elaine's, your writing, your scholarship, your teaching, and just you as a human. So I'm just really thrilled to be here
Well,
tonight.
the feeling is mutual, so it's great to be with you. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. I love doing these things, especially with wonderful people like you. So let me start out by saying that first of all, I absolutely love this novel, and I find it to be a deeply feminist book, told in a really unique way. It's such a unique story. I'm not going to give anything away, but I'm struck by how the story is really about a woman finding within herself a blooming sense of agency, and her own spirituality, and an attachment to art that she had not been able to find before. But you're doing it in this unique way. She's not from Nigeria. You know all this, I don't need to tell you, but she's not from Nigeria. She's come here with her husband for a job opportunity, but she ends up connecting to this ancient sculpture, and it changes her. It changes her relationship to her art, to her husband, to the community that she's finding in this place, and to the place itself. And I found that just wonderful and fascinating. And I wondered if you set out with the goal of having her go through those changes specifically, or if she surprised you along the way as you wrote her.
I don't have much of a plan when I start.
Oh, good. Me neither.
My last novel, which is set primarily in Winston-Salem, I just had a house that I wanted someone to occupy. I had lived in it in first grade when my parents were on furlough. And I thought, I'd like to write a novel and set in Winston-Salem. I don't know what it's going to be about, but let me choose a house to put the character in. And that's how I began. I didn't know what the story was until I did a Google search for the year that I lived there. And there was a sit-in at Woolworths,
Okay.
which I could walk to from my house, and heard nothing about that year because I didn't hear anything about the civil rights movement that year that we were there. But with this novel, I did start with a sculpture.
Okay.
So that was the seed of the novel. There's this ancient sculpture at the North Carolina Museum of Art. It's a good thing I'm not using the mic because see my hands. This ancient work of art that's called a knock, N-O-K. Oh my gosh. See, and I knew the word like that. Sorry, Pete. You guys are cool, I know, but sorry to the rest of you. Okay. These sculptures were found in the 1940s during a British tin mining expedition. They're 1,500 to 2,000 years old. They're terracotta. And the one that we have in our museum is a man, and he's sitting like a thinker like this. And he has huge eyes and a large head and looks almost extraterrestrial. And one leg is broken off. Well, in the course of the novel, we had to do a gender change on him because I really needed a female knock for my purposes. But as soon as I discovered Isabel, I knew that she was going to be the one to whom this sculpture was going to come to her. And it was going to carry a message, or, it was going to change her life. And I didn't know all the parts of the story, though the way it starts off, I kind of knew pretty early on. There's a sex scene. Get reading, and you can be there about page 18. I'm trying to sell books. So I don't get so. But what I love about what you said is that Isabel comes to find herself through a work of art. And I mean, I imagine many of us here have had that experience with a novel or a poem, right, that has guided us through our entire life. But for me, it was different to think about a work of art having that same effect. And especially for someone in a country that's not her own country, and especially a work of art that was not created by anyone by her ancestors, right? Yeah.
I love the idea, and it's so present in the book. I love the idea that that this sculpture has kind of found her, and that's sort of an important part of the whole discussion around her having found it throughout the book. But I love that idea of it having found her, and it kind of becomes this totem or talisman.
Absolutely.
In just a really beautiful way. I was wondering if you would read the bit about when she finds this.
So I just have to say that I love my publisher, Blair. And I just want to be sure, because you could own this copy for the rest of your life and maybe never notice, excuse me, this golden bird on the inside. So there's this, what's it called? Like gold foil. And then the binding is also in gold. So I had it in my house for a while. I didn't do one of those book opening things. Those little, you're supposed to do a video of yourself opening your books. I just couldn't see I just thought that's not going to work. And so it'd been in my house for a little while. And then Blair did a book opening thing, and I saw them open it, and they showed it, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I went and looked, and sure enough, there it was. So one of the really smart things I think my editor and publisher did was put this little excerpt inside the jacket cover. So I'm just going to read this. Back in the yard, Isabel knotted her skirt between her legs and labored in a rhythm, lifting and bending to scoot by hand, standing to breathe. The task became more difficult, a hard job of work, as her grandfather would say. She set the shovel aside and reached for the sharper spade. A goat with a red cord around its neck moved into the yard and back out. She continued to dig. Finally, she thought she might be deep enough. The hole she had created 2 feet deep, maybe 3 across. The root ball of the lemon tree was smaller than that. She would loosen the roots that would begin to tunnel in the rainy season, twining around buried stones. Her hands were deep orange. Something glistened. Isabel leaned into the hole and placed her finger on the protrusion. Some bit of reddish glaze. With her fingertips, she brushed away soil and then sat back on her haunches. A single cloud moved over her. She continued to dig until she uncovered the pebbly edge of something. Terracotta, or it might just be lava rock, a common occurrence here. In that case, she would have to find another place to dig. She should have trained to be an archaeologist or a serious artist. But after 2 years in art education, she left college to marry Nick. Women had so few choices. The ultimate success was to marry a good-looking man who was going places. She wanted to marry Nick. She was desperate to go somewhere, anywhere. She got back to work, though it was even hotter now and not a cloud in the sky. The pebbly edge had a uniform curve to it and spoke of intentionality. Lava rock would not. It must be 90 degrees, but the work felt cleansing. Isabel's purpose was no longer to surprise Nick. Her purpose now was merely to dig. Suddenly, a bit of dirt fell into a depression. Isabel leaned over. What seemed a black marble was a small and perfect hole in the curved surface of what must certainly be a long-lost vessel. Light seemed to move through her body. She could make out a definitive arch above the black hole. Isabel seemed to ascend to a place of knowing. Somewhere close by, a girl pounded yam. A mother called out to her child. An engine sputtered and died. A man set out 3 tins of palm wine for sale. 2 boys kicked a ball. A schoolgirl wrote her name on the face of a notebook. Isabel moved to the opposite side of her excavation. Just as Angelica had told her, the world turned upside down reveals what we have not yet seen. Isabel saw. The object was some sort of sculpture. The strong arch was above, not below the hole. It was an eyebrow, and the hole was the iris of an eye. She could make out a faint upper lid. Isabel's hands trembled as she reached out to place her palm on what must be the curve of a head.
And that one that kicks off so much, really beautiful character development and beautiful writing that I love and admire so much. Actually, I did want to ask, I'm gonna change the order of some stuff here, but I wanted to ask about her work as a painter and her evolution as a painter. And I know you do some painting yourself, but I wondered how your painting maybe shapes and interacts with your writing, and especially with this book in particular.
Sure, that's a great question. I could talk about this too long. So I think I started looking for my art form when I was about 8. With little success for quite a while. But I always wanted to make things. And we didn't have art stores, supply stores in Nigeria. So it was a little bit of a challenge, but when we would come on furlough, I would get poster board and I would I would write these awful poems and I would illustrate them. And there would be one about my dog that I didn't own, and one for my mother at Mother's Day. And I was just always trying to make things. But there was no real outlet for that for a long time. So, I kind of did school. And when I came to the US, I was sent to the US without my parents, who remained in Nigeria, one-way ticket to the US. And I landed in Arkansas, but that's another story and probably another book. So I won't go too much into that. But for 2 years, I performed admirably as an American girl. And then actually when my parents came to stay with me and my sister, but they came because I asked them to, I kind of fell apart. It's like I had been holding myself together. And I went to college and lasted a semester and a half, and then I dropped out. And I was in a really deep depression. And my mother was a wise woman, and she recommended that I take an art class at this little college where they had found jobs in Kentucky. And so I took a watercolor class, of all things, which was a great idea and a huge challenge, because I don't think you can try anything much harder than watercolor. Because when you put the color on the page, it is there. And I was taking a class, and the teacher wasn't going to let me draw a picture first. You don't draw a picture and then paint it. You have to go from a loaded brush, to paper, and somehow get your mind into your and to start doing things. And if there's any part of that painting you want to be white, you have to leave it. You have to know. Think about this. It's like X-ray or something. You have to know where the white is going to be. There's no white paint in watercolor. I kind of like that because there really aren't many white people in Nigeria. And so I decided to be an art major, and I did watercolor, I did all kinds of painting, and it saved me. Absolutely saved me. My dad bought me a little car. I drove out to the countryside, and I painted barns and trees and falling down mailboxes, and nothing that looked familiar to me really. But in a way, it was like later when I went to graduate school and read American Lit, it was a way to make the land mine, or to make this literature in this weird foreign country mine. When I was so relieved when I started reading contemporary American Lit that everyone was depressed and off their, like, completely confused and alienated. I thought, wow, I could be at home here. But so I painted, but then I thought, I can't support myself painting. So that's when I went to, PhD, got my health insurance taken care of, right? And had that career. But then after I'd written 2 books and I was free, I bought my freedom, and I started writing novels. And in this one, I got to put the painting in the novel, which is so cool. I thought I hadn't even quite said that. That is just so cool.
It is so cool.
It is really cool. And so I also do paint and sketch when I'm like at a writing residency. I have these big art journals that are black, hardcover. They're for art, but they have nothing on them. I don't want a journal. If you ever buy me a journal, not that I expect you to, but don't get lines on it, because who wants lines? Who wants anyone to tell you the size or shape of your writing? So I do watercolor because this is art-worthy paper. So I've gone and then just gone to the Walmart not Walmart, to the drugstore and bought one of those little teeny children's paint box. Yeah. And one that I particularly like, a painting I particularly like that I wrote, that I painted when I was finishing this novel. I did a kind of realistic little watercolor, and then I was eating a mandarin orange, and I thought, why not put some mandarin orange slices just in the air, right? And that just kind of frees me up to think, why not put whatever I want anywhere in the writing? I mean, it doesn't have to be. It's coming from a point of view of the character, right? Yeah. So. Thanks for asking that. I enjoyed that answer.
Oh, me too. I'm so glad I asked. Yeah, well, because you can feel that love and joy and excitement about painting throughout the novel, and just sort of the way that the more that she practices and the more that she works on, the freer she feels. And the happier she is with her work. And I really love that. So it can be really easy to get kind of tight in your work. So it's a beautiful, beautiful thing for a character in a novel, but also for anyone trying to be great. Let me ask sort of a writing process question. Because I love to ask you those questions always. You know, you, after spending your formative years in Nigeria, I feel like the sense of place in this novel is so, it's not just, oh, this is very place-based, it's beautifully written, it's visceral. The descriptions are so physical and sensory that they're just sort of all encompassing as you're reading. And I love knowing that comes so much from lived experience. I'm also really interested in the research aspect, because I'm sure there was a lot of research that went into understanding sort of the social and political atmosphere of Nigeria in 1963 in a way that those elements of the book felt just as strong and developed and all encompassing as the place, you know, the descriptions of the place. So can you just talk a bit about your process of blending those two?
The research and the writing. Yeah.
And the research and the memory of the place.
Oh, right. Okay. So this novel is set in northern Nigeria, and I grew up in the South. So I did need to do a significant amount of research. The South, I lived in the rainforest in the South, and Isabel's living in a sort of savanna, almost semi-desert environment. It's cool at night. I don't remember a cool night in the South. And northern Nigeria is primarily Muslim. The influence that created that came across the Sahara Desert from the Mediterranean through, you know, that trade route, the trade route there. And the outside influence that came to southern Nigeria was the Portuguese, and then the Dutch and the English, right? And so the southern Nigeria is primarily Christian. All of Nigeria, people still have like traditional faith and belief, but mostly Muslim in the north. So there were some things though that translate, or they're in both the north and south. For example, the Harmattan, which is when the Saharan winds bring basically a dust storm from the Sahara down all the way to the Atlantic. And so it would be more intense in the north, but I experienced that every year that I was in Nigeria. And it would just happen, you'd get up one morning and the Harmattan would have arrived, and everything would just be covered in dust, and you would be covered in dust. And I wrote a scene in which Isabel basically turns a little bit brown, and I kind of loved that, playing with that idea. And the trees are largely the same. Creeks would be largely the same, and rivers, not the very same, but I mean in appearance, and the fruits and so on. But I had a research assistant in northern Nigeria as I was writing the novel, and the novel wouldn't exist without her, because I wouldn't have been able, I had to know, I was chatting with Wayne and Mary a little bit before we came over here about how I'm not willing to write a novel and make up a town. I just don't know. I want it to be a real town. And I want to know how far it is from the bigger town where she's going to travel. Like, is it plausible? She can go in 30 minutes. If she needs to get her baby to the pediatrician because suddenly it spiked 104 fever, can she get, what are we going to do? What's feasible? So we figured all of that out, and what it would, in 1960, what the road would be. I mean, if you could time travel back and be a Nigerian who knew everything at that time, it should be right in this novel. So yeah, she was fantastic. She's also a librarian. Bow down to a librarian. But what you're perceiving as the soul connection, that's from my growing up there. And I don't really know why I had such a profound memories of Nigeria. My sister was not born there, but traveled there when she was 3. It doesn't seem to have the same deep connection. She had memories of the US before she went there. I have no memories of the US until I was 6 and lived in Winston-Salem that year in that house. So I also wonder if I always knew I was going to lose it. And so I was kind of storing it up in a way that maybe you wouldn't if you thought you were always going to have access to it.
Okay. I'm going to ask the big one.
Okay.
This doesn't have to be the big one.
$1 million question.
Yeah, well, this book has it's become unexpectedly timely in that Nick, Isabel's husband in the novel, works for USAID, and I would just love to hear how the current state of things with that maybe shaping how you think and talk about the book, or any other related things you might.
Sure. So when I first started writing, and I wrote my memoir, and then I wrote a couple of novels, but mostly the first book, my memoir. And someone would, introduce me, and I was born in Nigeria or grew up in Nigeria. Someone would ask, why were you there? I would say, okay, first of all, they weren't evangelical. My parents were missionaries. It was like, I have to apologize. I have to, I don't want you walking out on me. This is not a religious book, it's not a conversion story. So I always felt like there was controversy around my parents being Southern Baptist missionaries. And I didn't think when I started this novel that there would be controversy about USAID. It didn't occur to me, because it was just so normal. What's normal? I'm trying to think of a corollary here. USAID was normal as football on Friday night in high school. It was normal as, I don't know, putting up an artificial tree because there is no Christmas tree in Nigeria, or it's as sort of common as, I don't know what you can give me, but I went to school with USAID kids, right? We were all kids, missionary kids, USAID kids, Peace Corps kids. The only Peace Corps kids we had were like the director of Peace Corps in Nigeria, because most Peace Corps people were 2 years and they weren't married. So, so I had no expectation or idea. What I wanted to do was just have a reason to get him over there. Right? And so I needed a husband who was going to be really different from Isabel. He's an agricultural engineer. She, in her heart, is an artist. And so he's very organized and puts things in categories. And she's kind of, thinking about brushstrokes and what the moon looks like in the middle of the night and whether she should try to get a painting of that. So it was a great option for an expat American, right? And so I saw USAID folks as just maybe not quite as, well, they weren't as religious as my parents, but I saw them maybe not quite as, I'm trying to think of a good way to say this. I don't know how to say it. They were a little too secular. They drank beer, they danced, they smoked cigarettes. I mean, like when they would come, we used to swim in this fabulous cold river that you could crystal clear. And they would come smoking, and I would think, don't you know better? You're interrupting the majesty of our swim, you know. So my dad had smoked right up until he got on a boat to come to Nigeria. But he waited until the last minute, and then it was like, well, that life is over. So they were, you know, they were our brothers and sisters growing. The kids were, that was just part of our life. And the work they did, what I remember is agricultural work, medical work, building. Yeah, those are the three things I primarily remember. Medical would be largely, you know, getting kids vaccinated, setting up clinics, that sort of thing. Yeah, so I'm still surprised, I guess, that it's become so controversial. Yeah. So, excuse me. So are we. Yeah, I know. So you never know when you're writing a book what is going to be suddenly rise up and be, you know, look completely different or have a kind of, I don't know, energy field around it.
Right, like a weird resonance you were not expecting. Yeah. All right, let's go with a fun one. I always love at book events to hear about a writer's writing process and sort of practice, sort of the day-to-day. I feel like I remember that you have been in the 5 a.m. writers delegation.
I'm afraid I'm not anymore, but I was.
Can't do it.
For a while, back when Twitter was Twitter, there was a 5 a.m. writers club, and I joined it. I mean, you don't have to pay fees. All you have to do is show up. And you would just show up and you would, you know, type in or key in, you know, here for the hashtag 5 a.m. Writers Club. And then people would say, you know, hi, Elaine, got your coffee? And we would all start writing. So I did that for about 3 years. And I was motivated largely by Elizabeth Phillip, our wonderful friend who died. Because she was a Episcopalian priest, and I didn't know how she was getting her writing done. That was how she was doing it. She was doing it from like 5 to 6 every morning, and you wouldn't believe how much I wrote. I wrote a large part of this novel, and then when I would send this off to a reader, and you know, you got to wait for somebody to read it. It's like, well, I'm here. What am I going to do? So I would have to write essays and short stories and send them off, and they'd get published. It was amazing. It was crazy. I mean, if you looked at my resume, you would see like, okay, here she has a book, and then, oh, she has one little essay over here 2 years later. But then it was suddenly like, she had a book, and then, oh, look, she's got 12 essays right here in 2 months. It was wild. But that's a lot. I'm not doing it right now. Yeah, I don't know if I'll get back to it.
Yeah, 5 a.m. is really early.
But so what I have needed to do through my teaching career is try to write every day that I'm not on campus. And because I teach at NC State, it's a what do they call it? Something research university, a level 1, I don't know. It means we have a lower teaching load because we're supposed to be writing and publishing. Like half of my job is to write, half is to teach. So I go to class 2 days a week, and 3 days I don't. So I've tried to be very, very rigorous about writing on the days that and doing it first thing. If it's not 5, whatever, when I make my coffee. And then Annie, I go to writing residencies.
Oh, imagine.
Yeah. And I've learned to make them up. I can even do them at home. You just tell your husband that you're going on a residency and it's going to last for 2 days. And he's not supposed to like be in your space and expect anything. But the main thing is that you expect of yourself, like, oh, I'm at a writing residency. I'm going to go out and walk barefoot in the grass first thing in the morning. I'm going to get into this whole mood of like my creative aura, and light a candle and have your coffee and start to write before you really wake up. Yeah. And then you just do that. Then you have your sweet little breakfast, maybe suck a cup of coffee, get back to work. And you're like, you know what? I should just do a little yoga. And you get your yoga mat out, do a little yoga. It's like, I should take a nap. Because when I go to residencies, I nap. I do some serious napping. The first day is pretty much just a long nap. Because really, you have to go through the whole transformation. But I can do it at home. But see, I think you have to go to one to practice getting the whole aura. Because when I'm at the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts and I'm writing, and I've gone for 5 weeks. After you've spent a day writing, you walk out, you just levitate. You just kind of become like one with the air. So that's
You're
what
really
you want.
selling it. I love it. I want to start doing it.
Once you can achieve, once you know what it feels like, then you can kind of go for it. Yeah. So residencies are really, that's how I would not have written a novel. And finished it and gotten it published without. I don't think they even know what the novel's about. Do you all know, sort of?
I did intend to ask you to sort of give the elevator pitch, and I didn't do
I think
that.
we're supposed to go to questions and answers. Someone could ask.
I'm so sorry.
No, I think
I got too excited.
I mean, no, you know that it's about this woman who goes with her husband to Nigeria, and she's in search of something that will lead her to her destiny. And it sounds like she might have found it.
Yeah.
But how that all works out, of course, that's the book.
There's some entanglements. They're fascinating.
Thank you.
Question or is it time?
Sure.
Okay. I have many, but I know I can't ask them all. So I'm Karen Gloden, and I finished the book yesterday, and I've read all of your books, and I'm a fan. But this is my favorite for sure. So if you haven't read it, it's wonderful. I'm struck by many things, but one of the things that really got me thinking is none of the characters are bad, really. You know what I mean? And I've come to expect, I read all the time, and I've read many amazing books, but it seems like in most of them, there's a character you just really have to hate or be afraid of. And that doesn't happen here.
I've got 3 novels and none of them has an antagonist.
It's true.
No, I'm not interested in them.
Okay.
And my protagonists are so flawed. They're just tying themselves up in knots. And so the antagonist is always the self. That's true in my life. It's right. But I don't think I made a decision when I started writing. I'm a self-taught novelist or writer of fiction. I didn't mean not to write an antagonist. I just didn't need one.
But when you're reading it, you kind of think there's possible antagonists.
You find one that's possible?
I think so, because
Can you
Because you-
whisper it to me later?
yeah, you know how you keep waiting for the worst things to happen. And there are some worse things here, but some that I imagined might happen didn't, which I was happy for. But it's just an interesting whole piece.
Yeah. I've been wondering if I really needed an antagonist, hoping no one noticed, but. Yeah.
Yep, so we have a question from the at-home audience. This is from Denise, who says, and you may have alluded to this a little bit earlier, but I'll still ask the question so you can maybe fill in. Did you begin this book with the ending in mind, or did the ending emerge as you developed the characters?
The ending emerged. I never know where I'm going, really. I might even know the time frame. Yeah, the setting. I might know this novel's, my first novel was set from 1853 to 56, and what is contemporary Nigeria now, but then was not. And I even had a diary that inspired it. But I didn't know how, so I knew it was going to end in 1856, but I did not know how it was going to end. I knew who the main character was because I had her diary, right? But I was mostly interested in what she left out and wanted to understand all the things she had not told us, because she really didn't tell us anything that mattered. I mean, she told us how many people showed up at Sunday school. So that wasn't the story. So I did not, but I have to say I love the ending. It makes me very happy. And it's one of the ways that novels are feminist. And thank you for what you said about that, because I absolutely did intend to write a feminist novel.
More questions from the folks next door. Don't be shy.
One of the things that I loved about the writing was that you use a lot of little short sentences, and then you might have a long sentence. Was that on purpose?
Oh, maybe.
Can you repeat a little of that question? Just
Yes. So the question from Rita is, she's read the novel, and you wrote this to me. She admires the way that I use short sentences and then long sentences, right? And I can't say that in every place that I do that, I thought, oh, let's use some short and long. It's more like I really studied sentences when I wanted to write a novel. And I read Gertrude Stein, who doesn't really punctuate anything. And this for a while, I turned in a novel that was no punctuation in it. No, we're going to need some punctuation. And then I read Hemingway because I wanted to read his sentences, and this may surprise you, but he writes a lot more long sentences, compound and sentences. And I remember flying to California for some reason at some point. I think I was writing my memoir, and I had a Hemingway book, and I had my journal, not the big one, and I just copied out sentences with his syntax and my words. And that passage got is in the novel, in the memoir. And so I practiced writing sentences like other people. And when I'm writing, I'm always, not necessarily consciously, but just beneath the surface, thinking about the sentences. Yeah, and I think I used more short sentences in this novel, maybe, than the other two, but still the long ones. Thanks for noticing.
was very, to me, it was very obvious. I think it was because it was different from what you'd written before.
I think you're right. Anybody else who's here have a question? Yes.
You mentioned the art museum's knock. In the story, it's a female. Are there real female?
There are
Okay,
real
that's
few,
good.
and thank goodness for that, because that was going to be a real struggle, since I like to make things plausible, well, not just plausible, but kind of possible. I think, didn't Aristotle say the action, what happens in should be plausible, not necessarily possible? Or was that Henry James? I think it was Aristotle. But I was very relieved, when I found a book that had, and then I found them online. There are a lot of them. You can look them up.
Okay.
Knock female Nigeria, and you'll see. And if you just want to see the one that's the NCMA, just Google Knock NCMA Raleigh, and you'll see it. And you'll see why. I mean, I saw this guy in like 2005. It took me a while to find out how he was going to work for me. Yeah. So, and you didn't ask this, but no one, so there's been a lot of excavating of these knocks since they were discovered. And the British have been out there with Nigerian excavators. Germans have done more than anyone to try to uncover these knocks and figure them out. There have been lots of different theories about what these knocks were. Were they like idols or gods or divinities? Were they set near where someone was buried? Were they made for more important personages in the town? Were they like, you know how people will put an owl on the corner of their roofs? Were they somehow meant to keep off spirits or something? Or a gargoyle? But no one has ever been able definitively to figure it out. And by the way, the people who made these knocks, there's almost nothing else left. There are a few tools. There aren't even bones. So the culture that created them, they're not ancestors of the people who are there now. They came later. So these people, we don't know what happened to them, but they made these intricate, gorgeous works of art. And of course, there are all kinds of Nigerian works of art. The Brennan bronzes that were looted by the British and taken to the British Museum and are still there. One of the things this novel is interested in is who owns the art, okay? And how do we go about getting art where it should be? So a theory that these German and archaeologists have come up with is that they were ritually broken, because they're all broken. And the one at the NCMA has a broken leg. The one in my novel has a hand broken off. And I just loved that as a metaphor for humanity, that everyone is broken. And that somehow these were made to be broken. I mean, just think about that. Making my novel and then tearing it out. I couldn't even tear out a page, you know? So it just spoke to me profoundly.
So we have time for one more question if there is one, and if not, we can move on to signing. All right, in that case, I'm going to invite both of you, Annie and Elaine, for any final thoughts, and we'll start with you, Annie, and then last word if you'd like to.
I'm so glad that you wrote this novel, and it, you know, I've read it twice now, and I keep finding new parts to be in awe of, and it just fills me with a sense of wonder, and also this sort of deep connection to Isabel that I really, really love, and it's so beautiful, and I just want everyone to read it. It's
thank you so much.
Such a special book.
Great endorsement. given that you read lots of really good books by people near you. Um, So I just want to say that I have the most fun talking with audiences. And I'm having more fun with this book than any time before. I just feel so free with this book, and I just feel really happy that I get to go around, and people are interested and show up. So you're so much a part of this book. I mean, I don't write not to be read. I'm not Emily Dickinson, nor was meant to be. So I always am looking forward to what people are going to find and tell me about. I'm like, oh Lord, I had no idea. That's so cool. And just, yeah, it's such an honor for me, for you to show up and give me so much joy. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
Yes.